A crucial new report showing the U.S. economy shrinking for the first time in 3 years. The GDP fell at a rate of 0.3% as President Trump's massive and ever-changing tariffs rattle consumers and businesses.
Several days later.
Report for April hitting the wires, non-farm payrolls a greater 177,000. We're expecting, as Joe pointed out, 133,000. 177,000 would be the second best of the year outside of what's in the rearview mirror.
Producing was a positive job number. This is just it just proves that we have an economy that all the experts continue to underestimate. And I think they're looking through a prism of political hatred, for lack of a better term, rather than being logical about the greatest economy in the world. There are reasons countries want to come here. There's a reason people buy our treasuries. There's a reason a dollar is the world's reserve currency. And the notion that they can flip a switch and find a replacement for America is nuts. And yet that's been the Wall Street narrative all along.
That's right, because the media can't get out of its Trump derangement syndrome and just report the facts. Look, no surprise that government jobs are down with a federal hiring freeze in place, and the fact that President Trump has made it clear he wants to see an economy driven by private enterprise.
Great to have you with us. Please like, subscribe, and share. Thanks so much for joining me here at the Chris Highland Show. Really appreciate you rolling up. We have got to talk about Trump's bombshell economic news. Trump is driving the United States towards the golden age of prosperity. It's already happening. It's happening before people can almost even blink. While we're in the midst of all this pain and torture and economic shrinkage due to the tariffs, according to the lamestream propaganda talking heads in the propaganda media, none of that is actually true. They are gaslighting you. It's absolutely amazing. They're talking about what they thought were bombshell GDP numbers, where the GDP contracted 0.3%. When we find out now that none of that is true, we're going to get into all of that, but we're going to start because we're going to talk about the bombshell jobs report that just dropped this morning. The April jobs report has exceeded all expectations, despite, mind you, despite all of the government firings, the hundreds of thousands of government employees who have been riffed or fired from the Fed by Doge and the Trump presidency has not impacted the jobs report one iota. Let's dive right in. Thanks so much for everybody for rolling up. Here we go.
436,000 increase in the number of people who are employed. So this is an amazing report. The number of people, the labor force participation rate rose. So this is a really strong number. I wanted to mention one other quick thing. About 2 weeks ago, every headline, Wall Street Journal, New York Times, Washington Post, was, the stock market is crashing. And since then, the market is up, like 2,800 points.
Yeah, well, you don't see that
by the way, I don't see headlines about that.
That was the point. That was the point that Scott Bessent made. Yeah, Scott Bessent made the same point yesterday. That
exactly, he made that point. But
exactly, the market took a dive based on insecurity during the whole Liberation Day announcements and all of the tariffs, and it has already rebounded 2,800 points. The liberal media, the propaganda talking heads, the globalist puppets will not tell you any of that. They'll not tell you that the market is already rebounding and that the market is now getting primed to absolutely run away. And it's getting primed to run away because Trump is delivering multi-layered victories. It's not just a jobs report for April. It is the jobs report. It is the actual underpinnings of the GDP report, which the Dems tried to convince everybody was a negative. Oh, we're heading towards recession. Oh no, one more quarter of negative growth and we'll be in a recession. Even though, remember, 4 years ago, they absolutely redefined the word recession and everything because Biden's economy was an absolute train wreck. They don't want to talk about any of that, but we're going to dive into all this. So 177,000 jobs added in April. That is up by a third over what expectations were at 133,000. And the number all the Dems were looking at was 100,000. If they could get a jobs report under 100,000, that would mean that they weren't even maintaining the current jobless rate. But that's not what happened. Trump and his economy exceeded expectations despite the hundreds of thousands of government layoffs. So in reality, the private sector added 400,000+ jobs, which is absolutely amazing. Now, CNN was forced to report it. They couldn't hide. Here we go.
All right, breaking moments ago, the April jobs report just released showing steady gains amid some economic uncertainty. I want to bring in CNN's Matt Egan, who joins me now with more. All right, what are we seeing in the numbers? What is the context here?
Yeah, Omar, we were bracing for a slowdown in the jobs market. We did not get that. We got steady hiring. This jobs market is just relentless. Let me run through the numbers. 177,000 jobs were added in the month of April. That easily beat forecasts for 135,000. So not even close there. The unemployment rate stayed low. It stayed at 4.2%. When we look at where the jobs are right now, we're seeing solid gains in a number of places. Accommodation and food services, right? Restaurants, hotels, hospitals, healthcare, private education, all of them adding jobs. One place where we saw lost jobs again was the federal government as the DOGE cuts to the workforce continue. But still, when we really zoom out here, this jobs market has been solid, right? I mean, 177,000 jobs. That, when we look at the trend, look at this. We saw that March was actually significantly revised lower to 185,000 jobs added. That's down from the original report. So you can see there really isn't all that much of a change here. And these are still very solid numbers. Now, this is a contrast to what's shown up in the surveys, right? We've seen so much gloom and doom from consumers, small business owners, CEOs. There's all of these concerns about the economy, about the trade war. One thing I would note.
Because the surveys are cherry-picked. They're cherry-picked by the globalist propaganda media to try to sow fear and dissension and chaos into the markets because they want Trump to fail. The propaganda media, the globalists, the establishment, they want Trump to fail. But what they cannot buck is an entire market. And the market is now pricing in exactly what is going on. People are starting to hire in the private sector, upwards again of 400,000 new private sector jobs, because that jobs report takes into account all of the USAID losers who got fired, all of the government departments that are being shut down. And it's not just the job report. We're going to revisit the GDP report, which we prefaced in the very beginning, in the very first clip. The Dems have been running around for the last week or so saying, oh, the economy's in a recession. We could be in a recession if they get one more bad quarter because it shrank 0.3%. But in reality, it didn't shrink. Let's dive into that, because in addition to an extremely robust jobs number, the GDP number is way better than the propaganda media would have you believe. Check this out.
The falling GDP, panic, is more fake news. And that's the subject of the riff. All right, hang on. The liberal media and their pals on Wall Street are talking about recession because the first quarter GDP was scored with a slight decline of 0.3%. And those afflicted with the disease of Trump derangement syndrome are now talking about recession in the second quarter.
Nope.
But if you look under the hood of this GDP report and you carefully parse through the numbers, what you actually come up with is a rather strong economy that's growing at something around 3%. That's right, 3%. Now, Mr. Trump has barely begun with core GDP in Q1, which takes out the fluky trade import numbers from the tariff front-running. So the harder GDP, which is private sector consumption plus private sector business investment, well, you see an actual increase in the first quarter of, wait for it, 3%. And then, if you look deeper into the numbers, you find even better news. Private business investment is up while government spending is down. That's right. Business fixed investment increased nearly 10% at an annual rate in Q1. And even better, business equipment and machinery, which is an incredibly important harbinger of productivity, of job increases, and real wage hikes. That rose an incredible 22.5%.
So what we're getting to is the GDP numbers are skewed for two major things. One is government spending. All of the GDP numbers essentially for the last 4 years under the Biden train wreck have been skewed, they've been pumped, they've been faked by constantly rising government spending, which is not actual GDP, not real. It's fake. It's junk GDP. It's like going to McDonald's and eating a bunch of junk calories and saying, hey, I'm sustaining my body. Yeah, that and a bunch of sugar will give you energy for a while, but everything starts to break down. The same thing is true of government spending. It is factored into the GDP report. It absolutely should not. Imagine, for example, they take $1 billion, they buy a bunch of bombs, and they hand them over to Ukraine, who drops them on Russia. That's done. That GDP is over. It's almost like spending $1 billion to dig a bunch of holes and refill them. You didn't actually accomplish anything. But this GDP number, when you factor out the government spending, which is decreased massively under Doge and under Trump, when you exit that out, because that's dragging the overall number down, and also when you exit out the fact that a whole bunch of companies were importing big numbers in order to avoid the upcoming tariffs that everybody knew Trump was going to levy in the first for this first quarter, that also skews, because when you import, it is actually a negative GDP marker. So when you factor all those things, Kudlow's got it at 3.1%, which is extremely sustainable, robust growth. But when you look even below those numbers, we could be talking a much, much bigger GDP number. Let's dive into that, because there are some estimates out there that have the number between 4 and 5%. Check this out.
0.3%. And the media is saying this is the negative fallout from President Trump. See, they told you so. He was going to mess it all up, and he did. But when you drill into the details, there's some interesting things here that may not be the case. Almost every marker of GDP was up, except government consumption expenditures. Government spending, which was always up during the Biden administration. And in fact, this is why the Biden administration always took credit for a strong economy, is because it was government growth. We held their feet to the fire for it. Now take a look at the Trump administration's first quarter GDP, and it shows that all other measures are up, but government spending is down. Not that one. Can you go forward to the next one? Yes. So these are the numbers we're looking at. Economist Peter St. Onge joins us to break this down. So, Professor St. Onge, did Trump tank the economy, or just in the ways that he said he would?
You know, the media was waiting for this, man. They were so happy to see that negative number. So this was a kind of a crazy GDP report, and it was actually a blockbuster report. It was off the charts, fantastic, but it was a negative number. And the market actually took a minute to figure it out. So when the report first came out, mainstream media, they said negative, we're in a recession, Trump has done it, did you vote for this?
Absolutely gaslit the entire American public, trying to make you think this was a negative report because they didn't dive into the actual numbers. But we're going to. Here we go.
And the Dow Jones actually dropped about 2,000 points just off the bat. And then it immediately started rebounding as the analysts on Wall Street figured out what was actually in this report. By the end of the day, the market was actually up on it. And so what happened is that the entire negative part of the print, yes, you had government shrinking, and that was the first time that it happened, of course, since Biden came into the office. But the big one was that the negative was because imports are being front run, right? So there was a 41% increase in imports. And these are companies trying to bring imports in before the tariffs hit. So that's cars, it's clothes, it's everything under the sun. Those subtracted something like 4.1% off of GDP. So import stuff, it's kind of weird, but it counts as negative GDP. The assumption is that it's going to increase the GDP in future. But anyway, it's not accurate for this purpose. It's kind of a statistical quirk. So now what's fun is that if you strip out that front running, then you actually had about 4.5% growth. Okay. And as you mentioned, government actually shrank, right? That's what was driving the whole thing during Biden. So if you ignore that, you're looking at close to 5% growth, which is extraordinary. Now, where did that come from?
5% growth. You're looking at upwards of 4 to 5% growth, which is massive. And it's real GDP. It's real private sector gross domestic product. It's domestic manufacturing. It's domestic consumption. It's not government junk GDP. It's not just import-driven GDP. It is American production that is already starting to ramp up. It is already starting to reindustrialize. Trump is winning, and he's delivering a threefold victory. Massive jobs report, phenomenal GDP report already. But at the same time that jobs are growing, that GDP is growing, he is also delivering on his promise of slowing inflation and bringing prices down. The Fed's preferred inflation gauge slowed in March, so inflation is coming down. We've already seen the price of eggs come down. I've already seen the price of gas come down in my neighborhood. I hope you have too, because it's actually been falling. The deregulation, which takes a while to spin up, the deregulation has been in full force. The drill here, drill now, baby, has been in full force. Energy prices are going to start coming down. So this whole thing is just starting the slow roll and is going to start picking up speed. It is going to be a snowball downhill. It is going to be an avalanche pretty soon of awesome numbers. And it is because of the Trump economy. It is what he's doing with drill here, drill now. It's what he's doing with deregulation. It's what he's doing with reducing government spending. It's what he's doing with the tariffs. The tariffs are having this effect on the economy because they've brought in all this foreign investment, which has jumped up the GDP. And he's even in spite of shrinking government and even in spite of all the initial imports. But at the same time, Trump is rewiring the global economy. And that is already working too. The reindustrialization is happening faster than people can possibly think. Let's dive into that. That's the next phase I want to get into, because the other part of this massive victory that is happening right now is what Trump is doing on the economic trade front. Here we go.
You know, the move at the start of trading, the Dow Industrial's up 194, the Nasdaq right now up 67, and the S&P higher by 23, 15 minutes before the jobs numbers are out. Now to China. Beijing is now considering official trade talks with the United States, but it is also requesting that Washington cancel its unilateral tariff measures first. The tariffs already taking a toll on China. The April manufacturing activity in China seeing its sharpest downturn in more than a year. Now, the CCP is quietly exempting a quarter of U.S. imports, which is around $40 billion. That includes more than 130 items like pharmaceuticals and industrial chemicals. I spoke with Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent about it all yesterday, and he's told me that China's economy is in big trouble if they do not negotiate. Watch this.
I think first there will need to be a de-escalation on these very large tariffs. 145 and 125 are not sustainable on the Chinese side. We saw some very poor GDP numbers out of them, out of China yesterday. We're now seeing very large estimates of job growth loss from 5 to 10 million jobs. So the Chinese economy, is slowing down substantially here. So we will likely revisit the purchase agreements that were put together in the first China trade agreement in January of 2020 to make sure that the Chinese are honoring those agreements. And then we are going to push for fair trade with China.
Joining me right now is the host of Making Money here on Fox Business, Charles Payne. Charles, great to see you. Lots to talk about this morning. 15 minutes before the jobs numbers, we've got China giving the U.S. a little bit of an olive leaf here. No, I mean, exempting certain products. It wants to talk about trade. What do you think?
Absolutely. They're doing a major Usually a country negotiating, having hard, tough negotiations with another country will do things for public consumption in their own country. Because the media hates Trump so much in this country, China knows it can do things for public consumption in both countries. So, on the surface, no one's made a phone call. We don't care. We're in this to the death, invoking Mao's march and how he went into the mountains and hit out for a year, whatever. That's not modern China, right? These are the class warfare there, the inequality there. The rich folks there couldn't last. They won't be able to hold out. Neither will the nation.
That's right.
Let's not forget, they had a massive stimulus plan in January. Oh, before that, they had a massive stimulus plan in October. They've had a massive stimulus plan like almost every other month for the last year. The bazooka, this time it's going to work. They made so many mistakes. The biggest mistake overall has been, of course, the one-child policy. They can't walk that back. It's not working out. They mishandled COVID massively, and they're in trouble. They're in a lot of economic trouble. It won't be reported on this side because too many people in the media really would love to see Trump fail in this effort. But
that's right.
the facts are facts, and I'm glad Bessent has that quiet, calm strength and resolve. By the way, the future's being up right now.
Exactly. Bessent and Trump and others are running the show, and they know exactly what they're doing. They're not going to blink. China needs us way more than we need them, and they're already on the verge of economic collapse. So this is not going to help them. They will come to the table eventually. I don't think they're going to come to the table until we get 3 or 4 other Southeast Asian nations to make trade deals, and that is right around the corner. In fact, some of the things that are already happening, massive. This is not the trade deal. We're talking about that in a minute. But first, we're going to talk about the massive influx of reindustrialization that is going to basically protect us from the ability of China to manipulate our economy and bring back strategic national security industries. Check this out, because Trump is delivering on all of this because of tariffs and because of his phenomenal economic policy.
It is Howard Button at the cabinet meeting yesterday.
Okay, so TSMC has started construction on a third chip plant in Arizona, part of the U.S. expansion described as the single largest foreign investment in U.S. history, with Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick stating it's tariffs that brought that in. Keyword, guys, it's tariffs that brought that in, securing an additional $100 billion investment without subsidies, creating 40,000 construction jobs and 20,000 full-time jobs. Go ahead, Rob.
Investing $165 billion in 1,100 acres in Arizona, and they're building the highest tech chip manufacturing, semiconductors, and 4,000 employees. American tradecraft, right? Technicians doing every kind of work. The classic foundation of America is building it. They had 14,000 people. They're expecting 40,000 people to build the rest of their plants and to employ 20,000 people for the rest of the time. This is all driven.
You never saw a site like that.
And this is all driven by your tariff policies. No chance this be happening without you.
Bingo.
It's absolutely massively important. 40,000 construction jobs, 20,000 ongoing U.S. high-paying manufacturing jobs. And this is just one example. But even more importantly, this is the foundation of technology. This is the building blocks of technology, which the U.S. still controls the world. We still lead the world in technology, and we will lead the world in AI because we are repatriating all of that chip manufacturing. I want to show a chart because one of the things that China had over us was that the global market share of chip manufacturing, we were in the others category. Samsung is South Korea. This is all Taiwan, and SMIC was China. But this is why Taiwan was such a flashpoint, because if China ever invaded Taiwan, or if they ever blockaded the South China Sea, we could be out all of our chips, all of our semiconductors. But not anymore. According to reports, fully 1/3 of this blue piece of the pie will now be, along with parts of this green, will now be red, white, and blue. It'll be made in America. Fully 1/3 of Taiwan Semiconductors output will be done in America. We will be chip independent. The other tariffs that Trump is driving will make us auto independent. In his town hall with Cuomo and O'Reilly, he specifically said that we are currently repatriating all of the assembly to the United States, but But by the end of 2 years, he wants to see every single part made in the United States. So 100% of a vast cross-section of the automobiles, 100% of them will be made in America, every part as well as the assembly. So we will be semiconductor independent, auto independent. He's making us steel independent. We are already ag independent, and we will be energy independent extremely shortly. Trump is reshaping the global trade economy, and he's reindustrializing America almost relatively overnight, faster than anybody thought possible. These companies are already, they're fleeing China. Some are coming here because they want to get rid of tariffs altogether. But like Apple has shifted essentially 100% of its US chips out of China. They're shifting to Vietnam and India. Now, some of those those iPhones may even come back into the United States. But right now, Apple is divesting from China because they know it's unsustainable. China has to make a deal. But they're probably not going to do so until other people start making deals when they really feel boxed in. But check out this, a little more facts on China before we get into some of the trade deals that are out there.
Your population needs to become more productive. What is the leading indicator that would suggest there's a real problem in China?
Factory activity is now at a 2-year low. That is a real indicator. Shipments from China to California are already down 10%. That is a real-time indicator. China was already in a recession before these tariffs were even mentioned. So they've been struggling for years and years and years. They were building ghost towns years ago that nobody lives in, just to falsely inflate their economic numbers. Look at what's happening now. They're a population where actually in decline. I mean, they're not producing enough babies to maintain population growth, which we all know. Right. If you want to grow your economy, you need to grow your population, and your population needs to become more productive. So China is stuck between a rock and a hard place. I agree that politically, they don't want to appear weak. They probably really want a deal right now, but they don't want to come off as weak. Now, the big difference between China and us is that we operate quarter to quarter. That makes it difficult. We have to show results every single quarter or our economic data reflects it. China operates on a 100-year plan. That gives them some more time.
On that note, Mark.
So China, as they said, China is in trouble. Meanwhile, America is ramping up. Things are looking very rosy as we roll into what Trump called the golden age of America. And I firmly believe from every economic indicator that I am seeing that we are rolling in that direction. So check out this from J.D. Vance as he was making the stump on some of these economic issues.
I just wanted to get a tour of one of the most high-tech steelmaking facilities of the world. I didn't fully appreciate how high-tech this steelmaking facility was. There's a lot of criticism that Donald Trump is trying to bring back jobs of the past. These are the jobs of the future, making American steel, building bridges and automobiles, homes for American people, and doing it in an incredibly sophisticated way. I just wanted to get a tour of one of the most high-tech steelmaking facilities of the world. I also, of course, wanted to meet the workers because, what President Trump has said, he's been clear about this, not just since his first term, but going back to the 1980s when he was talking about this stuff on Oprah and Phil Donahue. The president thinks that we have to make more on stuff.
Absolutely. And as I said, Trump is currently in the process of making America semiconductor independent, steel independent, energy independent, ag independent, automobile independent, and finally, the last one will be pharmaceutical independent. He has already identified those as the national security industries that must be repatriated to the United States so that they cannot be controlled by enemies or adversaries in any future global conflict. And he's already doing it. He's doing it at a rapid pace, faster than anybody thought possible. As we said, Taiwan Semiconductor is shifting 1/3 of their output to the United States so that we can be semiconductor, if not completely independent, virtually independent. Trump has said in his town hall with Cuomo that his goal is in the next couple of years that a cross-section of automobiles will be 100% manufactured in America, not just assembled, but that every single part in the supply chain will be made in America. He is revitalizing American auto, American steel, American ag, and he's doing all of this in a high-tech way with robotics, with automation, with AI. It is absolutely fantastic to watch. And at the same time, he is reorienting the global economy. As Lutnick said in his presser a couple days ago, they've already got one deal. He's got one deal done, just waiting for the country's parliament and prime minister to weigh in and approve it, and they can announce it. Trump said he's got 2 to 3 that they're going to be announcing very, very soon. This is absolutely fantastic. As soon as they get one of these deals and it becomes the blueprint, they will start falling like dominoes. The market will absolutely rocket forward. Consumer sentiment will 100% flip again because consumer sentiment is fickle, and they will be all behind this. And China will be boxed in and facing economic ruin, and they will have to make a deal. And that deal, if Trump does it right, as Lutnick said, as Kevin O'Leary said, will involve everything. Access to their courts, no more theft of IP, no more of the unfair practices that they have engaged in. They want to be part of the G8, they got to play by the rules. So this is absolutely fantastic. But at the same time, Trump is re-energizing the American economy. With energy independence, with the drill here, drill now, we will see lowering prices. But at the same time, we will see us tied much closer to Europe in a good way, because they will be buying our liquefied natural gas. They will be buying our oil and petroleum. They have to, because they don't want to buy it from Russia. This is great, great news. Now, check out Lutnick as he was talking about this very fact.
Here's the point. I have a deal. Done. But I need to wait for their prime minister and their parliament to give its approval, which I expect shortly. I'm not going to tell you what country. Let the president.
It's just you and me here and a couple million people hopefully watching.
I let the president decide. So, and then there are country after country where we're just working through the details. But you have to remember, they have prime ministers, they have parliament, they have to work through their process. But all of these are going to be coming. What they're going to be is they're going to be incredibly smart.
He has a deal done. Now, remember what we heard out of India. India's already got the framework for a trade deal that they're working through. Trump has said that there could be 2 to 3 right off the bat. I think we're looking possibly at South Korea, at Japan, India, and one other. And then maybe very quickly we could get into either Italy on its own or as part of the EU, UK on its own. These are all being negotiated. And as they start falling, the entire world that has been trampling our door, things will get a lot faster, because all of a sudden they don't want to be last to the party. Because as the U.S. starts securing these deals, the terms are going to get far more pro-America because we won't need them. Once we get 1 or 2 or 3, the rest become less important. Not that Trump's not going to make them, but they're going to want to be first because they're going to get the best deal. This is absolutely fantastic. I want to end with this clip, because Donald Trump made this promise that he was going to bring back American independence, the American economy, the American worker. And he's doing exactly that. Promises made, promises kept. We are rolling forward. I am super excited about the golden age of America, because it looks like it's actually happening.
The entire Trump economic agenda is about making it easier to do business in America, to create jobs in America, to hire American workers, and to build your factories here in America, not in China or any other country.
Absolutely true. And the one piece remaining now, actually, we got 2 pieces, although Lutnick's already said he's got a deal. We need a couple of these trade deals to be announced and start the dominoes falling. And then the last piece, the last major building block that we need they've already started working on, and that is the big, beautiful bill making permanent all the tax cuts, no tax on tips, no tax on Social Security, the largest tax cut in history, actually congressionally mandated lowering government spending, making permanent a lot of the Trump executive orders. That, they said, could be done by July. All signed, sealed, and delivered. The House's plan is to have their part of the reconciliation done by Memorial Day. That gives the Senate a whole month to work on theirs, and they're targeting July 4th, American Independence Day, to announce the big, beautiful bill. That'll be the last building block. In between now and then, we get 4 or 5 or 10 or 12 of these trade deals, and then we add that last piece. You are going to see massive massive increases in the market. You're going to see the world come flooding, knowing that they have to build their product in America. I believe we are going to see this thing start churning like a snowball going downhill. It's going to be beautiful. Hey, thanks everybody for rolling up. Midway Farm, thanks so much. Really appreciate everybody being here. Please like, comment, and subscribe. Most importantly, share the Chris Highland Show. Remember, God is good and he is sovereign. It'll all be good in the end. Till I catch you next time.